Good evening. It's 7 o'clock and it's time for the online property meet. I'm Rob Norton and welcome to our second online property meet. We have two superb speakers, Richie Clapson and Richard Little, and also like to introduce my lovely assistant Ivona.
Hi guys.
Hello. Hello Ivona.
Hi guys.
So just to start it off, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. This is, as you see, there are my details. I co-hosted the Croydon Property Meet since summer of 2017, and the COVID thing sent us online in May, which was last month. So this is the second actual meeting of the online meet. I'm from Carshalton, Surrey in Greater London. I'm just a normal bloke, attended schools around South London, moved down to Brighton, bought a flat in Hove, which made a couple of £1,000, and I bought my first rental property in 1985. I've operated my own part-time property business since around then, really, which included house removals, house and garden maintenance, and property clearance. And as I say, I've presented the Croydon Property Meet since 2017 before starting with this. Apart from that, I was in the fire service, 32 years of it, far too long, but it paid the bills and it was quite a good job. Property-related business owner, as I say, landlord and property investor, and my interests include those things that are written there: family, travel, motorcycle touring, and helping others. I was looking for something to talk about, so I've come up with 12 things you could still do before the lockdown ends. 12 things that you should maybe think about doing or have done. You might have done it anyway. I'm sure there's lots of other bits and pieces, but these are 12 things that I've come up with. First one being, have a look at your business plan. See if it needs a little tweak here and there. If it's required, why not tweak it? Another, lead generation strategy. Always a good idea. A basket of eggs is better than just one. Communicate. That ties up with the number 2. Communicate with the agents and other people involved in the property world. I like this one. Create a mini mastermind group with some colleagues. Maybe half a dozen of you get together and have a little chat once a week, once a month, or whatever you like. Check your social media is effective. I've started off this meeting. As I say, it's the second one. We started up a website. We've got a Facebook page, and we'll be adding to it as we go along. Could you do with giving someone a kick in the pants? Do you need a reshuffle? Maybe, just a thought, just a thought. Check yourself, check your finances, make sure you're all okay. Streamline your expenses, have a look at the bank account and see what can go, what can stay. Look at getting some money, perhaps a remortgage, perhaps whatever else. Even 3 means of extra funding. Business cards, always a good one, always a good thing to have about, especially when you're starting out and you've got to give someone a card to so that they can get hold of you. And the outsourcing, what can you do to save your time? I do a little bit of it, but largely what I do is me myself. I could do it a lot better if I get a little bit bigger and start outsourcing stuff. I'm sure of that. So there's my details, should anybody want it. And I'll hand straight over to Richie, if that's all right. Are you there, Richie?
I certainly am, Rob. So you need to stop sharing your screen so I can share my screen.
Do I? Right, okay, beg your pardon.
That's okay.
Stop sharing my screen. I'm screen sharing. Oh God, how do I do it?
You're done? You're done?
Have I?
Yeah, you're done. So you should find my screen. It's back on, Rob. Can you see my screen?
I can see you on the right-hand side in with 5 people.
Yep, and can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Excellent, Richard, thank you very much. Great stuff. Rob, thank you for having us here this evening. Obviously, I'm going to be presenting to you this evening about development. Obviously, Richard's talking about development. Never met Richard in my life before, but had the pleasure of sharing a presentation session with him a few weeks ago. So now this is twice in a couple of weeks we've both been presenting. And I have to say, looking forward to Richard's talk this evening. Richard, I really enjoyed your talk last time with quite honest, straight talking about people getting into development and what they can and can't do. So I think you guys tonight are here in for a bit of a treat on some real straight talking honesty about development and what you can and can't do. So welcome to all of you. I know there's a few people. I just looked at some of the attendees, Rob. There's a few people that I do know on there. A few of our students are on there. So welcome to Yoko, Gavin, Paddy that we've worked with. There's a few other people I know on there, Joe and so on. So yeah, welcome guys. So let me take you through this evening what I'm going to chat about. I've got about 40 minutes, so I'm going to try and keep till time. I'm going to be chatting about how to become a small scale being important, property developer, and why now is the perfect time to do that. So I'm going to take you through that in the next 40 minutes. And I think we might, if we stick to time, have about 5 or 10 minutes for a few questions at the end of it. So here we go. Well, first of all, let's talk about becoming a developer. And let me say to you that you already have the skills to become a property developer. Now, a few of you might be thinking, well, what are you talking about? What do you mean I've already got the skills? How have I got the skills? Well, let me talk about what the skills are you need, and I'll talk about why it's so important to think of development in this way, in my opinion. Because I think the important thing here is that a lot of people talk about getting into development and they end up at the coalface. They end up in an industry it's got great rewards, but it's also got a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of very deep crevices that you can fall down in property development. And if anyone out there tells you it's easy, don't believe them. It's not. Richard will say this is hard work to get into, but the rewards are terrific out there when you get there. Now, the important thing is that I've always talked about is the name of our company. We teach people not to be property developers. We actually teach people to be the CEO of a property development company. Have a think about that. If you take nothing else away tonight, other than that, being the CEO of a property development company, rather than being a developer, that's a big subtle difference. So you already have the skills to be a developer. Well, what are those skills? What am I talking about? Well, these are the skill sets that you need to become a developer. You need organizational skills. You need people skills, you need management skills, and you need decision-making skills. Out of all of them, people skills is probably the most important skill set that you need. So if you're out there and if you're an existing business owner, and it doesn't mean you have to be in property. So I've seen people transition from restaurateurs into property development very successfully because they've got those 4 skill sets out there. People skills is the most important. Everything we do is about relationships in this business. When things go wrong, it's about relationships and it's the strength of those relationships. Contracts and all those things are important for sure, but actually it's about the power of actually working with people, being able to communicate with people to get things done. But of course, along the way, you also need to make decisions. If you can't make decisions, you're never going to get anywhere. So you need to be a decision maker. And on top of that, you need organizational skills. You need to be able to organize things. You need to be able to get people to do what you want, when you want them to do it. And add with that the management skills to coax and encourage these people along. So actually, if you've got those 4 skill sets, you can be the CEO of a property development company, potentially. There's a lot of other things that's needed, but just think about that. If you don't have those skill sets, if you're out there tonight and you're thinking, I'm rubbish with people, I can't communicate, I'm really quiet, well then don't even think about property development until you can go out and improve some of those skill sets. If you procrastinate, if you actually can't make a decision, don't think about becoming a property developer at the moment, because you'll be sat around the table one day and a stack of people will be asking you, looking at you, wanting you to make a decision. And if you can't do that, it's no good. So if you haven't got those skills, go away, get those skills, maybe come back a few years later and think about property development then. So think about those 4 skill sets. That's the first thing I want to talk to you about this evening. Then I want to talk to you about a secret weapon. Well, it's not going to be a secret because I'm going to talk to you about it now, but it would have been secret if I hadn't talked to you about it. It's leverage. Leverage is, in our opinion here at Property CEO, is the ninth wonder of the world, okay? Because let me tell you out there, I don't know who knows any millionaires or billionaires. I know a few millionaires, and the thing that they crave the most is time. If you don't build a leverage business, the business doesn't work for you. You end up working for the business and you don't have time. There's no point making a lot of money, whether it's 100,000, 200, 300,000 a year, whatever it is you want to make, and having no time to enjoy or spend that. So it's really important that you think about leverage, and building a development model around leverage. This also helps mitigate risk, and risk is massively important that you try and avoid too much risk. So in leverage, what do I mean? Well, think of this chart. Another thing maybe to think about and take this away, maybe just snap a shot of that on your camera tonight or on your screen, just so you can take that away about where you would sit in development. So here, this is about sitting at the point as a property CEO. It's no mistake that that's also the name of the company. It's about you being, as I said just a minute ago, the CEO of a property development company. Even Rob's taking a snap of that. Look, it must be good. So if Rob's taking a snap, you guys are going to take a snap of that. And then alongside it, as another subtlety that you may or may not notice there, it says non-executive advisor. The important thing here is about having someone to support you on your journey. If you go out there and you just give it a go, you're going to make some big mistakes, okay? If you go out there without any support, you're going to struggle. What you don't want is you don't want to get into a position. I was actually on a conversation today, funny enough, on a phone call today with a potential student, and they said, will you be supporting us, checking all of our numbers on all of our deals as we go forward? No. Why would we do that? You wouldn't want us to do that. You wouldn't go to university and then leave university, go out into commerce, and then keep ringing up your old senior lecturer and asking him to check this or check that. You need life skills. You need the skills that's going to take you forward to actually stand on your own feet and be independent as a developer. But of course, you don't have the years of experience. So what we teach people, and this is massively important, so another key thing maybe to write down, even though you've taken a screenshot of it, remember the non-exec advisor. Have that person alongside you. That person would be someone with gray hair or no hair, okay? Or both in my case. So on that basis, you want a position where you've got someone with many years experience alongside you to support you. They're the sort of person you can ring up on a Sunday night and ask a quick question. Maybe have a quick coffee with them, but they're there to bounce ideas off. They're there to mitigate risk, reduce risk. So that's really important. And then you'll notice underneath there, all the rest of the team are beneath the project manager. So again, really important that you have a project manager in. And again, a conversation in the last 48 hours with a potential student said, I'm going to project manage this myself. Well, his background is retail, very successfully in retail, and he thinks he can project manage it. And I said to him, well, if you're going to come on board with us, I can tell you now that you will not, if we're going to train, you are not going to project manage your own jobs. And if you do, I'm going to come around and put a horse's head in your bed. You're not going to do it, okay? You cannot manage your own project. You need a project manager to do it. And actually, it's a bit of fee, but actually, if you go into development in the right way, you can afford that. And again, this is about mitigation of risk, and it's about leverage. It's about getting time back. And that person speaks the language of the contractor, the architect, the structural engineer, and so on and so forth, and indeed all the subcontractors. You don't. You're in a position where you very easily get caught out if you don't speak their language. Even if you've got some property experience, and I know tonight I'm almost certain there's quite a number of investors on, buy-to-let landlords, HMO landlords, and so on. And a lot of people from that arena come on board. We teach those, but the language in development is very different. There was someone I was chatting to today, and they said the amount of moving parts in development is 1,000 times greater than what you get in developing buy-to-lets and HMOs. So it's a big step forward. And that's the point about actually having someone leveraged in between you and the rest of the team to communicate properly with them. So you're the CEO of a property development company. And just to get this point across to you, I want you just to think about this evening. Just think about a cabinet minister. So at the moment, does the minister in charge of health, let's pick health, let's be topical, okay? Do they have all the knowledge about the health? Do they know about hospitals and beds and medicines and COVID and this and that? No, they don't, okay? But they have a team of advisors that advise them. Because if there's a cabinet reshuffle, dear old Boris puts them over to defence, And they're now in charge of tanks and guns and armies and soldiers. Do they know about that? No, they don't. But they have people around them. They have effectively a non-exec advisor. They effectively have project managers beneath them. They have people that advise them. But they use those 4 skill sets. They manage, they make decisions, they organize, and they're good with people. So they have ministerial skills to run a ministerial department. So leverage and those skill sets, hopefully you can see this starting to come together and about being a property CEO. Now, one of the next big things, a lot of people say to me, well, how can I establish credibility? Who's going to work with me? I'm just a buy-to-let landlord. I'm just an architect from the industry. Or actually, I'm just a businessman or businesswoman. Nothing to do with property at all. And this will be my first branch into property. And by the way, let's just dispel a big myth that is often out there. You do not have to, if you don't want to, if it's right for you, fine, but you do not have to start with buy-to-lets and then HMOs, then service departments and work your way up and become a developer if you're really good and well behaved. Not at all. There are certain people that tell you that. For some people it's right, for others it's not. And there are many people that come to me and say, oh, I've had to go through the journey, I've done my buy-to-lets, I've done my HMOs, but I hate the damn things. If you don't want to do it and it's not right for you, you don't do it. In fact, the skills that you learn at that end of the industry are not always appropriate for being developers. And in fact, we have to undo bad habits sometimes for people on that journey. So for some it's right, for others it's not. And you can then establish instant credibility, whether you've got that experience or not that experience. And let's just have a think about this. So your skills as a business person. So there you are, that's you on the left. I'm sorry if you're a fella, but you're going to have to just pretend for a few minutes this evening that that is you, okay? So there's you over there as a business person. But add to that the experience of your professional team. You're sat there, you're the end of the table, and then you've got that professional team around you that are supporting you. That's how you start to build credibility. And all of these people, you know, that you need on your team, they charge a fee for their service. It's about who's buying, who's selling. They want to work for you. You don't have to sell to them. They sell to you when you can establish yourself out there. That's what they do all day, every day. That's their business model. And actually those teams will be highly experienced, the architects, the engineers, the project managers, the contractors, etc. Many, many years experience in those teams all together, as you can imagine. So let's just have a think about this. Here's you. There's you in the middle. There you are. You're the property CEO. You're now just got into development. You're the CEO, as I've talked about. And you're about to go into a meeting, okay? And you're about to go and see a big funder, a commercial funder, who's going to lend you £600,000 to do your development. Now, let's just pretend tonight that that commercial funder is Rob Norton. Your very own Rob Norton is your commercial funder. And he looks a tough cookie, doesn't he? You know, he's going to give you a hard time. And you're going to go in there and let's just pretend tonight you are a restaurateur. You've got no property experience at all, but you have got those skill sets and you are acting as a CEO. So you're out here in the foyer and you've got to think about your confidence and your credibility, because if you've got confidence, you've got credibility, and it's about building that. So here we are, and actually just alongside you there on your left, right-hand side of the screen, is your non-exec advisor. That could be someone, it could be someone like me. It wouldn't be me, but it could be someone like me, or maybe someone like Richard Little, but it probably wouldn't be him either. But someone like us with many years experience who is prepared to help you out. And there's ways that those people are prepared to help you out in that role. Not non-exec directors, but non-exec advisors. And then on your other side of you, there you are, you've got a project manager. So your project manager is there, probably with 30 odd years experience. And they are there to run the project. They understand the project. So you're about to go in the meeting. There you are, Rob's there. He's going to quiz you about your project and everything. You've got your non-exec, you've got your project manager, and then you've got the rest of the crew. There you are, you've got architects, structural engineers, mechanical and electrical engineers, contractors, subcontractors. You've got that whole team that's about to go in. And imagine if you go in there and you sit around that table and Rob's sat at the end, and Rob's going to start questioning you and he says, okay, tell me then how long this project's going to take. Well, you don't know, but you turn to you probably know the detail, but you don't know you know the overview, but not the detail, sorry. And you turn to your project manager and say, there's no problem at all. George, for tonight, George is going to be the project manager. George, could you explain to Rob how long the project's going to take? And George will bring out the programs and all those bits and pieces. And he might say, okay, that's terrific. Can you tell me the layouts? So you turn to your architect, Caroline. And you said, Caroline, can you please explain to Rob how the layout works? And then we do that. And then we turn to the contractor, the health and safety advisor. Maybe if there's a real tricky question, your non-exec advisor steps in, but they're there pretty much as your right-hand man or woman to support you. So imagine not only your confidence, but your credibility going in the room in front of someone like a serious funder. As I say, we're just going to pretend tonight it's Rob because he doesn't look too scary. He looks a friendly sort of character. But imagine some of these funders are pretty scary. They're going to give you a tough time. And why wouldn't they if they're going to lend you significant six-figure sums? But how confident would you be with all those people around you supporting you? And you're using your skill sets, your people skills to pull all these people together, the decision-making skills of who's going to answer what, organization to get them there in the first place, and of course, manage them. So you can see again how this all starts to come together. Let me now talk about money, because a lot of people talk about money out there. Well, you can raise all the money you'll ever need to run a property development business that returns six-figure profits. Can you do it with no money? It's possible. It's blooming hard work, okay? There are people that's done it with no money. I've actually proved the case and went and done it. We set up a mechanism and a process of doing it where we could show we could raise all the money for a project. That's tough, and it's getting tougher, okay? And coming out of this current position is probably going to be tougher. So if you haven't got a penny to rub together, if your net asset position, your own net asset position, if you don't own anything, you might want to have a rethink because it's going to be a tough, tough journey. If you've got some seed capital, if you've got a reasonably strong net asset position, but maybe not liquid cash, then you've got a way to move forward. Strongly discourage, which a lot of people think about, but we strongly discourage joint ventures. Again, on the phone with someone today, the same person I was chatting about earlier, said, oh, I'm thinking of joint venture with people. Don't do that. Most joint ventures in development go wrong. They seriously, seriously do, because we don't always align our values, our goals, our purposes with each other. And actually, what we don't often do is joint venture with someone with lots of years of experience, because normally with people with lots of years of experience, they don't need to joint venture. They're quite happily to do it on their own. You end up joint venturing with someone on the same journey as you. So the phrase that often comes to my mind is the blind leading the blind. You know, why would you joint venture with someone that's basically got maybe some different skill sets, but no more experience than you? And that's why most joint ventures in development go wrong, sadly, and it is a real fact. And of course, if you joint venture, you've got to do twice the number of projects to earn the same money. And you've got someone else you've got to work with, and you've got to agree with. So, okay, if you've got no money, possibly that's the only route. But have some seed money, yes, you've got a great start to go out there. But you can raise a huge proportion of the money yourself. Now, in terms of raising the money, okay, private money. If you actually ask for it, you won't get it. You just simply will not get it if you go out and ask for money. That would be quite rare. The secret, well, it's knowing how to present yourself and the deals to any investors and lenders. It's about going out there and knowing how to pitch. And of course, it's about looking credible. If you don't look credible, you know, if you go up there and you're trying to present to a funder, whether that be a commercial funder in the analogy I just talked about, or whether it's a private funder you're having a coffee with, and you can't answer the questions, or you don't have any confidence, because I can tell you now, most investors are pretty savvy sort of people. They might not know this industry, but they know about people that are blagging or not blagging. They will suss you out very quickly. So actually, it's better to go in there as a CEO of a property development company with the right support team around you and talk in those ways. But if you look credible and you know how to present yourself, the money is out there. Now, and just in talking about the money, I mean, banks pay around 1%. Well, it's probably less. It's I think they call it diddly squat at the moment. There's pretty much nothing out there that you're going to get out of the bank. So investors are desperate for something that can, of course, generate a better return. Now, people are saying to me at the moment over the last few weeks and months, yeah, but where's all the private investors gone? They won't be back. They've gone for good. Well, they haven't gone for good. Yeah, sure, they're batting down the hatches. I was actually speaking to a private investor today who said, no, I'm just going to bide my time for another few weeks and just see how things settle down. But I can assure you the money's not gone away. I don't see it being invested in any other businesses, particularly not retail, not airlines, not motor industry. You know, there's lots of industries that people would traditionally might invest in, stocks and shares. If you're really brave, maybe. But actually, the money will come back, okay? And the market needs to settle down. You certainly do not buy projects at the moment. The market needs to settle down and the money will come back. So, you know, property development typically returns 8 to 10% on an investment. So for a private investor, if you can offer them 8 to 10% for some investment in your project, well, that's significantly greater. You can present yourself in a credible fashion. That is really important. And money will be drawn to good deals. You've got to have a good deal. Is it easy to find deals? No, it's not. You probably look at 100 deals, and that's not just flicking through Rightmove, but 100 deals to find one deal. But ultimately, if you have the deal, then you have the opportunity. The money is not the opportunity. Buying and selling, you need to think who's buying and who's selling. If you have the deal and you have a cracking deal, you have the opportunity and the money will come to you, okay? You don't have to oversell yourself. If you oversell yourself, you will not get it. And then the other thing you need to understand, and this is how we present things, so other people might present it differently, but hopefully this is interesting for you tonight. I call it 8 pillars for success. If you want to understand development, there's 8 areas that you need to absolutely nail on. The first pillar, most people don't understand, but it's about credibility and brand. And I've opened up with that tonight. I've talked about how it is important to build credibility. Building credibility and brand is so, so important. Understanding the business. This is a business. If you own buy-to-lets, it's a business. Unfortunately, and very sad at the moment in this property industry, most people are not taught how to run a business. They don't understand the implications. So it's so, so important. You need to understand the business, have a business plan, know why you're doing it, have some direction, and have the right structures in place. Because you don't get them in place at the beginning, you're going to struggle afterwards without losing significant potential tax savings. Having the right team in place. The third pillar here is about understanding your team, leveraging your team. Who's who? How do they all work? How do they come together? And your finance options. How you actually go out there and raise the money. What are the options for doing that? What do I need to put in? Well, typically you might have to put in 30%. Can be some private money with a bit of your own, 70% of the purchase, 100% of the development, provided it's got planning or it's got permitted development rights. And as an aside, we will always say to new students, don't do anything that hasn't got PD or planning, because otherwise you've got one part of the control taken away by someone else. In time, go and do some development on land and do some new build and go and get planning, but you do not need to do that for your first project. Let's mitigate the risk. Let's get you over the line on your first project. The fifth pillar there is about sourcing deals, understanding how to source deals. 50% of the deals available for sale in this country do not come to the market. Where do they go? Well, a lot of them are through agents and a lot of them are through contacts. People skills, again, come into that. So understanding how to source deals, but how to sweat assets, how to get more out the deal than anyone else. And then, of course, the deal analysis, understanding how to analyze the deals, how to put them together, not only actually the numbers for the production of the project, but also how you're going to exit and what the likely gross development values are. And then there's a load of technical stuff, all the stuff you don't know. You need to know what you don't know, and that's massively important. And finally, and I heard someone say once, well, when it gets onto site, that's the easy bit. Wow, that's not. That's the most difficult bit. That's when it can all go wrong. So actually having design, procurement, and cost and communication control of the 8 pillar is so, so important at the end. So there's a little overview, quick overview in the first half of this talk about how you can become a developer. Of course, I haven't told you who I am. I'm babbling on here and you're thinking probably, who the hell is this Clapson fella? Well, I'm actually a chartered structural engineer. I'm a member of the Institute of Structural Engineers. I'm probably the most experienced, although I know I look quite young. It's just the camera is lying a little bit this evening, so do forgive that. But I'm probably the most experienced, and I'm pretty much certainly the only professionally qualified person out there who's actually training people in terms of development. I've been kicking around this industry now for probably nearly 40 years. Award-winning, we as an engineering company were peer reviewing projects like the Olympic Stadium, National Aquatics, the Velodrome in 2012. We designed things like Wimbledon retracting roof, as well as other stuff that made us money, because that stuff never made any money, but it was high profile and it won awards. So it was good for the bread and butter stuff and the developments and bits and pieces we did. You know, the rare thing is that why do I train? Well, actually, I enjoy it. I don't actually enjoy development, funny enough. Someone asked me today, I said I've been kicking around construction sites for nearly 40 odd years. I don't do too much of that now. I retired in 2010. I was lucky enough to sell out for a reasonable sum, a pretty reasonable sum that enabled me to retire in my early 40s. And I now do this because this is what I want to do. So that's a little bit about me. Okay, I said I would say to you about why now? Why now? Why should you get into development now? And by now, I mean now. I don't mean 2 months' time, I mean now. And what I mean by small scale property development, which is a term I've been banding around now for a while. So really important to hammer that home, because a lot of people are saying, well, yeah, you keep talking about small scale collapse, and now you're saying, I told you so. Well, yeah, I am a little bit. So please listen to small scale in a minute. But why now? The important thing, Why now, right now, would you want to get into development? Well, what's going on? Well, first of all, there is, of course, still a UK housing crisis, recession or no recession, pandemic or no pandemic. The housing crisis is still there. You need to understand that. That's not changed. Nothing's changed there. It's just gone on hold. And life will change for many, many people. You know, who out there hasn't? You know, if we all put our hands up this evening, if we're all in the room, I bet most of you have thought about maybe a new way of life, or should we do this, or what's important? What, you know, you've thought about that. Businesses are thinking about that. Unfortunately, there will be divorces. There will be people that just can't stand living with mum and dad anymore. There'll be lots of movement. There'll be people downsizing, releasing cash, people going, I want a bigger house with a garden in case this happens again. So there's lots of things that's going to happen there. And of course, property has historically always been one of the best investment assets. So that's no different. And I'll let you into a massive, massive secret this evening, and you might want to write this down. This is the biggest secret that I'm ever going to give away. They're not making any more land. Now, you didn't know that, did you? You didn't realize that, but that's so important. They're not making any more land. Okay, it's not a secret anymore. You guys know. But there's no more land made. So it's a great sector. It's a great industry to be in. The fact that what you're actually working on is in short supply. And then let me talk about planning, permitted development rights, and the planning system. Well, anyone who knows the planning system will tell you, and I heard Richard talk the other week, and he talked about planners and this and that. Wow, and Richard talked about his advice. I think was at one point saying we'll always do a pre-app, and you know, it's some great advice. And I'm sure he'd be talking about some similar things this evening. But the planning system is a mess in this country, and it was already under pressure before COVID. It was already under pressure. Well, it's going to be under more pressure. There's no secret there, is it? I mean, it is going to be under more pressure. So what's going to happen? We don't know. I don't know. The planning consultants that I speak to do not know. But we have a suspicion. And the suspicion is that we will get more permitted development rights. Okay, there are rumblings on this at the moment that maybe more permitted development rights will come into play here to assist us as developers. Well, why do they want to assist us? Well, we are agile as new or maybe existing developers. I know there are some students on this evening, and I know actually that there are quite a number of existing developers out there, and possibly some on this evening that are doing stuff that are down at the small scale. We're the ones that can flex quickly, move quickly. We're the ones that take up this gap on the small scale units. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. What are small scale developments? That space needs to be fulfilled. We need to deliver those housing. So that's massively important that we do that. And so it's quite likely that we will be given more permitted development rights, or maybe some extended. So I'm certain there's going to be some stuff coming in. I don't know. I wish I did, but I'm certain there will be something. So where are the opportunities right now that's going to be coming up? Well, offices. Companies are going to close down. Companies are going to scale down. You know, companies are going to decide that working at home is better, more flexible, less overheads. There's one company I know who've actually relatively small, but they've actually just twigged, and it's not rocket science, but they've just twigged that they're going to save £150,000 a year if they can get everyone to work at home. Well, companies aren't going to do that ultimately, and we are social animals, so we are going to want to go to a work environment of some description. But there's going to be an element of that, because even if you could save half of that, if you were a couple of directors that owned a company and you could split 75 grand in your pocket each, there's a couple of decent holidays or a reasonable car that you just bought almost for nothing. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of changes in the office market, and of course there was a lot of people complaining that the PD opportunities in the office market were all taken up. I used to say that to people, and I said, well, hang on, we'll find one. I can always find a solution out there. There's always find an opportunity out there. They are there. Are they harder to find than they were 6, 7 years ago? Yes, sure they are. Sure they are. But they've always been out there. But the great thing is, there's going to be, in my opinion, an influx of opportunities in offices that can be converted to residential. Now, that's not the panacea. That's not the be all or end all, converting it into residential. You could convert it into anything. Maybe you could convert it into co-working. Okay. One thing that I think, and I'm going to tell you this, even share this with you, that I actually think that a lot of people out there won't want to just work at home. Working on their kitchen tables in the dining room or the study at home, its interest will wear off for a lot of people. And it might be that actually we can create schemes where we can put co-working together, small, and forget COVID, because COVID will be gone. A lot of people saying, yeah, but what about COVID? There'll be a treatment, there'll be something, I don't know when, but I suspect because the whole world's working on it, they'll probably solve that one to an extent which is acceptable for us to go back into society. So we'll forget about it. We forget very quickly as creatures. And so I think actually co-working maybe, but actually the environments where you can create small office pods in out of big office schemes could be quite interesting. I can't talk too much about that this evening because I'm trying to watch the clock and make sure we deliver this on time. But there are some really interesting opportunities, and don't just go down the vanilla route of, yeah, let's take an office, convert it to res. Everyone's doing that. Maybe that will work, but what about taking an office and converting it into smaller offices? Have a think out the box. Great entrepreneurs always think out the box, but sure as eggs are eggs, there's going to be some terrific opportunities coming up in the office market in the coming weeks and months. Because what's happening at the moment, we're in a false situation. Furlough is going to be pulled back. As furlough gets pulled back, people get made redundant, businesses change. We're in a false prop-up situation at the moment, and in the next 2 or 3 months, that will change. Someone said to me today, oh, well, when do you think I ought to be thinking about being out in a position in the market, to be thinking about looking at opportunities? I said September, October in my book. I think we'll last a couple of months, but the real opportunities will start to come September, October onwards. If you can be in the market at that point, that's when the opportunities will be there. Let's talk about industrial. Well, industrial companies closing down, scaling down. Those opportunities are there. Well, a lot of people will be familiar with, some won't be, about the residential conversion opportunities that already exist. There are PD rights, but of course the bright ones amongst you this evening will go, yeah, but Clapson, it runs out at the end of September. Yeah, it does. Do I think it'll be extended? I do. Do I know that? No, I don't. But I would think it could be because it's not been abused. So why wouldn't they extend it? There are some rumblings I've heard from some people that there is a discussion around that. I don't know any more than that, and that's just a bit of hearsay. But I think it could be extended. It would make sense. It would help us kickstart the industry. And again, if you want evidence that the government want to kickstart the housing industry, who did they release first of all to go back to work? Construction workers, estate agents, resi and commercial. What does that tell you? That tells you where they see the market going. Why would they not extend those rights? So I think the PD rights in industrial buildings will be extended beyond the end of September 2020. So I think there could be some really interesting opportunities. I want to talk now about retail, the third sector I want to talk about this evening. Well, we already have some PD rights in the high street. Okay, that's quite interesting. There's definitely rights there that we've got. But the high street, I mean, it's going to take a bigger hit, isn't it? You know, the high street already was struggling. It was already struggling. It was in real problems. You know, who enjoyed going down their local high street? Not many high streets. I mean, just in this image here, you might not be able to see it, depending on what screen size you've got. But on the right, there's a betting shop. On the left, there's a betting shop. And probably I bet your bottom dollar as you go down the road, there's about 5 or 6 phone shops. That's not a shopping experience. That's no fun. The high street was already dead. Debenhams are gone. Laura Ashley's gone. I was listening to someone the other day, and there are a lot of other big players that are very likely to be on the way out. And we don't want the same things. Unfortunately, the likes of Amazon tend to win the stuff that we want, and just is not an emotional purchase. We just want to purchase. So what about redevelopment of the high street? Massive, massive opportunity in my view, but you've got to be entrepreneurial. And I talk about this, co-living, co-working spaces in the high street. And I use this term co-retail, which I've come up with. It's not something that I've read out of a book, but co-retail. People go, what's co-retail? That's interesting. Well, it's nothing new. I'm not a very clever person. I just think a little bit out of the box. Co-retail is what we used to do many years ago. In fact, we still have it in Indian bazaars or marketplaces. It's various retailing businesses working in a space together, but think co-retail in a slightly more modernized, posh fashion. We all know what co-working is. Most of us know what co-living is. And I don't mean co-living, a posh HMO. Get that out of your head. That's not co-living. That's a retitle of an HMO to make it sound better. Co-living in its truest sense is much bigger blocks, bigger units with proper defined areas, maybe a gym, maybe a library, maybe a private dining, communal dining, those sort of spaces. That's proper co-living. And much smaller pod units, but are independent and so on. Co-working, well, let us know what co-working is. The requirement for co-working is massive. The pounds per square foot that people pay for co-working is really significant. People pay a lot of money for co-working spaces. Co-retail could be the same. Imagine taking an old Laura Ashley shop, splitting it up, creating some really nice spaces that new businesses could come into, new retail businesses that will give us an interesting shopping experience. I'm going to use this term tonight, the Great British Artisan Business Boom. This has been bandied around a while. This is not my phrase. This could be new companies, up and coming companies, clothing, household, food, design, etc. More interesting personal businesses, very interesting products coming up. Have a look at Etsy. If you don't know Etsy, ETSY, a company out there that supports a lot of these companies. Etsy has grown massive over the last few years. That tells you these businesses are going places. And these are the sort of experiences that we want. You mix those on the high street with co-working, co-living. Imagine how reinvigorated the high street would be. We already have rights for shops and uppers. There are very clever things that clever planning consultants can get you to do with carving up shops, making 2 shops, now putting 4 flats over, not just 2. Lots of little things we can do to play around. Do I think more PD rights are going to come to the high street? Yes, I do. And so do many of my planning consultant friends. We think this could be an interesting opportunity. You've got to create the space. You've got to create the ideas. You've got to be entrepreneurial. But retail, I think, is really interesting. And to be fair, Brexit was encouraging us this way anyway. So there's some opportunity areas for you. Now let me talk to you, just to try and wrap up these last few slides tonight. What about small scale development? What is small scale development? Well, it's really important that you mitigate your risk as you're getting into development. And I even think long term. And I'm talking about developments typically, just to give you an idea, they're going to yield you 150 to 250,000 pound profit. Now, for a lot of people, when they start talking to me about development, they go, I want to be a multi-millionaire. The reality, when you bring it down, most people don't. Most people, if they can earn, I tell you what, tonight, by a show of hands, although I can't see them, but just put them up because I can probably sense it. If you could earn £200,000 a year, year in, year out, it's going to take you a few years to get there. But let's say you could build a process and a system and you could earn £200,000 a year, year in, year out, probably working maybe 3 days a week, maybe 2. So you're working part-time, highly leveraged. Is that enough? For most people, it probably would be. Rob's waving, it's enough for him. Rob, I'll send you a check every year, no problem. So if you can get into that, that's a great space to be. And we're talking about GDVs of 750 to 1.25. Now, I know that varies around the country, but this is just a rough guide, okay? Work at that sort of scale. And these projects, normally 18 to 24 months. And by the way, if you start into development, and if you want to get rich quick, forget it. Don't ever go on the lottery. I don't know how that works, but you might have a chance of getting rich quick. I don't know where the odds are going to play. But actually, if you want development, it's going to take you probably 2 years. It's going to take you at least 6 months to get yourself trained. It's going to take you at least 3 months to find a project, procure it, design it, sell it, 24 months. So if you need to earn money in the next 12 months and are desperate to earn money in the next 12 months, don't bother with development. Go and have a go at something else, come back in the future. But 18 to 24 months is relatively quick in and out. And imagine just lining up those projects, doing 1 a year, just 1 small project a year. And out of that, you retain some cash. So you use this model. So actually you say, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to earn 200,000. I'm going to retain 100. I'm going to live off of that because most of us can live off 100. In fact, most of us will live off 50,000 a year net. Well, imagine if you retained 100 and then you spent 100, you invested it. So you actually invest it in a couple of buy-to-lets, two buy-to-lets, 50,000 deposit, nice vanilla type investment model, build up your passive income. Nice and simple. Don't bother with HMOs, don't bother with SA. In my opinion, I can't think of anything worse, SAs, blimey. But anyway, for some people, they work. So just think about that, retaining some cash and have no team. You know, have it outsourced because at that level, you're only doing 1 project a year. This is 1 relatively small project a year. We're talking maybe 4 or 5 flats, 2 or 3 houses, something like that. Very, very small. And have developments, and I think this is massively important, in the need market. I define it as the need market rather than the want market. What's the difference? Well, we need starter homes. We need 2 beds. We need 3 beds. We don't need anything else beyond that. In this country, most families will survive in a 3-bed. Okay, might be bunk beds in 2 rooms for 4 kids. That's fine. But we get the 4 kids, we get the dog, we get the 1.5 cars or whatever it is we actually have as an average family. Beyond that, a 4 beds are nice to have. A 5 beds, very pleasant to have. A 5 bed, you know, with an outdoor jacuzzi and a swimming pool, etc., is a very nice to have. But they are the want market. The want market tends to shut down very quickly. The need market is the market that keeps going. So I think it's really important to actually work in the need market, have no team, so your overheads are down, retain cash, because cash is king. Liquid cash right now is so important for people. And work on small projects, turning over small numbers. So what do you need to win? What's important? Well, you need to have the skill sets. Let's just sum this up this evening. You need to have those skill sets. Remember, management, decision, organizational, and people skills. So important. Secret weapon. I gave that secret away completely. Leverage. You need to use leverage. It's all about leverage. It's all about being the CEO. It's about establishing credibility. Massively important to get credibility. You won't get anywhere unless you've got that. You can raise all the money you need, except don't think you can do this without any money. You need some money, okay? Gone are the days where you could do it with almost without a penny. In theory, it's feasible. Don't think you're going to attempt that because it's bloody hard work, okay? But you can do it with a bit of seed capital. Understand the 8 pillars, and then you know where to go. So rounding all that up, you might think, well, that was interesting. Well, how can I help you further? Well, I'm not going to come and do a development with you, that's for sure. But I'll give you a couple of options this evening if this really resonates with you of 2 things of how I could help you further. Have a conversation. If you want to have a conversation with me, I know I rattle through things. I go quite quick. I have set aside some time over the next few days to do that. If you want to have a chat, then please do that. It's absolutely free. You can have a call personally with me. I am going to put some times up. We have been inundated with people at the moment want to have calls and coming on board with us. So we've had to restrict that in terms of the intake that we do. I've actually got 5 slots. I'm going to put up whilst Richard's talking. I'm certainly going to be listening to Richard's talk, but I will put 5 slots up on our system because if I'd put them up earlier, they would have got taken. Who's it for? Well, it's serious. If you're serious, if you're a property investor, a property professional, maybe a business owner, and you're not shy of hard work and you've got those 4 sets of skills, then maybe I'll have a chat with you. If you're not, if you're in full-time employment, if you think, oh, I'm not really sure, if you're scared of hard work, if you want to get rich quick, if you want to make a load of money in the next few weeks or few months, don't bother giving me a call. You'll waste my time and you'll waste yours. So most important, you'll waste your own time. We don't want that. But if you're serious about it and you think this is you, then please, by all means, book a session. Copy that link. I'm going to leave that up there literally for a couple of seconds while I wrap up so we can do a few questions. Photograph that if you want. That link will be open now, but you'll find there are absolutely no time slots in there until I put those up. And I'll do those just sometime after 8. So if 4 or 5 of you are seriously interested this evening, then please, by all means, do that. If any of my existing students are on, don't book one just for the fun of it. You can guys ring me if you want to. Second thing, if you want one other thing, if you're interested to hear what we say, if you like the way I babble on, please, you're more than welcome to join us. We started these sessions, free webinar sessions, twice a week we run. We started them as support sessions. I know there are some people on here this evening who do come to those. And we started these when there was a bit of a lockdown. And we were inundated with calls for people saying, I'm struggling, I don't know what to do, my head's in a spin. So we opened the doors up and we run these sessions at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night and 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. They're 45 minutes. You can ask us anything you want. We always have guests on a Saturday if we can. Last week we had Mike Bristow on from Crowd Property. We've had project managers on. We've had architects on. You tell us what you want, we put them on. So Rob's kindly given me permission to put that up here this evening. If you want to join that, it's completely free. We don't try and sell you anything. It's a bit of fun, a bit of banter on a Saturday morning and a Tuesday night, and we send you off with a bit of positivity. So that's the 2 things I have to offer you. There ends my presentation this evening, Rob. So I've stopped sharing my screen, and I guess we've got 10 minutes for Q&A if you'd like to do that.
Right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can anybody hear me? Right, wonderful. Thank you, Richie. Brilliant. Absolutely wonderful talk. Very interesting about the high streets and that. One thing I forgot to say was whoever wanted to ask a question, please raise your hand. I should have said that at the beginning, but unfortunately I didn't. So we'll have a little Q&A session now, if you like, and then we'll get Richard on. And the same thing goes for during Richard's session. If you'd like to ask a question at all, just there's a little raise your hand button, and we'll get them all in at the end. Have we got any questions at all, Ivona?
No, there are no questions. There's a comment from Louise Reynolds who says that she had call with Richie last month and it was really useful.
You did. Hello, Louise. Good evening.
Excellent, excellent.
There is a question from Joe to Richie. He says, what is the typical value of upfront money needed to fund the first project? Obviously area specific.
Okay. Okay, to answer that, what you'll need, Joe, and I think I know which Joe that is. You might have others on, but assuming it's the Joe that I know, and Joe's here with his brother this evening, I think. Joe, you'll need 30% deposit, assuming you've got planning permission or PD rights. You will then get potentially 70% of the purchase value lent to you. Some people are pulling that back to about 60, 65 at the moment, okay, but I think that will creep back up to 70, and some lenders are still doing 70. You'll get 100% of the development funding, providing you've got permitted development rights or you've got planning permission in place, okay? They've got to like the scheme, they've got to justify, they've got to check your numbers. So that 30% that you need, so let's just say for argument's sake, that's 300,000, okay, the purchase value of property, and you'll need 100,000 of that, Joe. You need £100,000 cash going in it as private money. Now, does that all have to be yours? No, it doesn't. Some funders, and this is the point about working with brokers and understanding how these funders are if you're new to this marketplace. Some funders will not want you to have any third-party leverage private investment. They might accept family and friends, but they won't necessarily want to offer third-party investors that you've taken on loan agreements. Some funders will accept that. Some funders will accept 100% of that 100,000 all coming from third-party loan investors, okay? It's a matter of knowing who those brokers are that will do that. Others will say, we want you to have something in it. We want you to have at least 10% of that 30% in. So we want you to have at least 10 grand in. We want you to have something in there that's your own money. If you could put 10 grand in, I know of a funder that's done similar sort of numbers to that, and they've accepted that. You are giving personal guarantees, not only to your private investors, but you're giving it to the commercial lenders anyway, but they want to see some skin in the game. You've heard that term, Joe, I'm sure. So they like to see some skin in the game. It's possible to do at 100% private investment, much easier if it's very close family, but it's just about going to the right broker. So hopefully that answers that first question.
Thank you for that, Richie. There is also a question from Louise Reynolds. Why don't you enjoy developing, Richie?
Why don't I enjoy developing? Well, Louise, and it's interesting as well, people that know me know that I just straight talking. So there's no point me telling you I enjoy developments if I do, because the question comes up quite a lot. And they say to me, why do you train people? Why don't you do developments? Because you could make more money. Yes, you can. Okay. We don't run a big training company. We're quite small in terms of what we do. And Louise will know this because she's spoken to me, but for others won't know this. So we're not a huge organization. I would make a lot more money out of development. Having been in and out of construction sites, you know, for nearly 40 years, the excitement's gone, okay? I sold out for several million quid my business in 2010, and I did okay. Did very well, and I was very privileged to have done that. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of effort. I can honestly say, after that time, did I lose my way a bit in life? I did. For those that know me, know that 2016 was not a great year in my world. I had a business partner in a construction company for my sins, did a runner and cost me £500,000. So you have ups and downs. And the important thing is, I think what you find, Louise, and this is for everyone out there, you find your place in life. You find out what you really enjoy doing. Someone said to me today, oh, you seem to be in your flow when you talk. And I do like what I do. And so several years ago, when I actually started this business, and this business, my business partner is a guy called Ian Child, was one of my students. And it was him that said, we should start this business. I had a bit of an inkling of what this industry was like. And there is a lot of bad reputation in this training industry. And I didn't want to do it, but he convinced me ultimately to do it after 3 or 4 pints. So I decided I would. But I did another little thing, Louise, a few years ago. I went on a couple of long weekends, and I with a guy. It was a bit woo-woo. It's a chap called David Shepherd. It wasn't really my bag. And if anyone knows David Shepherd, he runs a company called Performance Partnership. Nice guy. And it was all about finding your purpose in life. And I thought, well, I'll go along. Someone invited me. And I actually came up at that time with what I was interested in. I don't have my quote in front of me, but my little statement that I wrote that weekend, and I went, everything I do now is going to be based around that. And it's something like inspirational, thought-provoking leader with the energy and drive to enthuse others. I might have that last bit round the wrong way. And what I've realized, Louise, is that actually I enjoy that more. I enjoy getting up in the morning. And when you get to a certain age, Richard will probably tell you this, when you get to a certain age, you want to get up and do something you enjoy. I don't have to get up. I had quite a few years when I didn't have to get up and do anything. And I really screwed things up. I made some mistakes and I lost a lot of money. Now I get up and I really enjoy what I'm doing. I have a lifestyle business that I shall run comfortably into my 70s because I enjoy what I'm doing. And the reward for me is when you get a student, I've got a couple of students at the moment, their first project, and they're going to make £500,000 between them. That is so brilliant. When someone comes up to you and says, you've helped us do this, this is going to change our lives. I love it. That is far more rewarding than getting a load of money in the door for me, because I've done that bit. So property development sites, going onto construction sites, yeah, I do a little bit of it, but it's not the thing that gets me up in the morning. And it was important that I realized that the thing that got me up in the morning was running this company, and is running it fairly small scales. Just myself and Ian, we're the only people that train, and we love it. We enjoy it. So that's why I don't do it. Bit of a long-winded answer, Louise, but you asked the question, so I've given you an answer.
Okay, thank you for your response, Richie. Another question from Stone Age Properties. He says, he or she, I run my own construction company and have done extensions, renovation, HMO conversions, but not new builds. How can I convince the lender to use our construction team, having not done new builds? Reason of using in-house team is to keep costs down.
Well, if I'm trying to understand the question there, if you're saying you're a contractor at the moment, you've done a refurbs extension, you want to move into the development space and now do your own new builds, and you want to use your own construction team. Others will have different opinions. Maybe my opinion on that is if you're trying to leverage, I could talk about leverage and what's important in life, and I think time's important in life. If you are only getting a deal to work because you can use your own construction team, then you're kidding yourself that you've got a development that works. Okay, developers develop, and all the hassle goes to the contractor. I don't want to be dealing with contractors and subcontractors and this and that. I have trained quite a few contractors. We've got a couple of contractors, one that was just come on board the other week, and their view was, well, hang on, I've just been doing this coalface stuff for so long. What about getting up and leveraging now my life out of this? I think the contractor that turns into a developer and has this dual aspect of running a construction company and running a development company, I think is very complicated. I think it's overly complicated. Depends how big you want to grow, where you want to be. But I think you can make that step up to a development role. You've got the skill sets potentially. We haven't spoken, but it would sound like you might have some of the requisite skill sets. You've clearly got some industry knowledge, which is terrific. And making that step up to development, and then having the choice of construction companies to run, to deliver your projects, I think is a better place to be. The problem that you may have, that some funders will look at, is a conflict of interest. Because on one hand, you've got your construction company that needs to deliver and make its money. On the other hand, you've got your development, which is trying to control those costs. And in between, if you adopted my model, you'd have a project manager. If you think you're going to project manage it, your construction company that's going to take a step up, I'd be worried about all sorts of cash flow issues and bits and pieces of conflict of interest. So for me, it just doesn't sit. It doesn't sit right. I know that's a bit of a roundabout answer, but hopefully I understood the question to get that to you.
Thank you, Richie. A question from Clay. Is there a minimum profit requirement to satisfy lenders to agree 100% development finance?
Yeah, the key is not about getting 100% development finance. The key is about getting finance in the first place, okay? So forget what finance level they're going to give you. And some funders will be different, but typically we will always say you want 20% on gross development value, okay? Some will say 20% on cost, and it's a 20% on gross development value gives you some margins, providing you've got your contingencies in there on construction cost as well, 10%, and other places. That gives you the position that you're going to be in a place where that you can hopefully deliver these things. The important thing that we always say is when you finish that project, and particularly if you're going to step into this arena, this is not easy, okay? And for most of you, this is not appropriate. This is not an easy thing to do. But if you're going to do it, and if we train people, the most important thing that I want you to have at the end of that first project, the very least is this thing, well, not mine, but your own, obviously, a shirt on your back. You've got to keep the shirt on your back. You've got to pay everyone off, and if you make nothing out of it, that's got to be the absolute worst position. If you start with 20% on GDV as a new developer, regardless of whether a funder, I had a funder the other day advising a student, he would do it for a lot less. And I said, don't. My advice to you, and if you want to work with me and you want me to train you, do minimum 20% on your first project, because that's going to give you the chance for things to drop off. And if things drop off, the market drops, or you've got some unforeseens, and you're going to have some of those, then that gives you a bit more margin. So if you want 100% development finance, that is also based more around the project and the planning permission, the risks they're going to have a look at. But if you're trying to maximize the funding, you want to be looking at that sort of percentage profit.
Thank you, Richie. A question from Will. What is your view on likely valuation trend for finished developments in 20 to 24 months from now? Down, how much?
So my opinion is if you were going to do a job now and deliver that into the market in 24 months, so 2021, my prediction would be that the values would be similar to where they are now. I think they'll be down. They're definitely going to be down next year. I certainly would not want to be delivering something in the market over the last 6 months of this year. I think they will, certainly, sell values in terms of purchase options and land, etc., is going to come down. We haven't seen that yet, as I said earlier in the presentation. But I think the market, in terms of GDVs and the end sales that you're going to put into the marketplace, and it's not just the values, it's about the sellability of these things, I think will pick up towards the end of 2021. And so if I was doing it in 24 months and I was delivering a project early in 2022, that was easy to say, wasn't it? I'd be thinking about having similar values to where I am now. That's what I'd be predicting.
Okay, thank you, Richie. A question from Malcolm.
Ivona,
Yeah.
could I think we need to get Richard on. The questions are all very good, but we have got a time slot. So we need to get Richard on. If we can make this the last question for now, and anybody else who wants to join in, do it afterwards.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, is that all right with you, Richard?
Okay. Last question from Malcolm. Joe, Mark, and I are new to this game. I have been a trader and have the skills you have pointed out. We are really excited about this new business. When and where do we start? Now is a point, but we are nearly ready.
Okay,
So,
when and where do we start? Okay, that's a relatively long answer and just conscious of time.
okay.
If that's Malcolm, which is Joe's brother, which I think it is, if
Okay.
it is, put a message in the chat box. I'll pick that up because let's try and keep to time as Rob does. And the best thing, guys, there for me to do is I've talked to you a bit about why now and so on and so forth. Yes, you're a trader, etc., etc. Let's have a chat. Drop me a message in and say if it's who I think it is. And I have briefly spoken. I've met Joe. If Joe is your brother, a few times out there. Happy to have a chat with you guys. Put it in the chat box or private message me on here, and I'll come back to you. Rob, is that a suitable answer on that one? I know I've short-circuited it, and hopefully that's okay for the guys.
Yes, I think so. It's anything else we can do it afterwards if you still want to, if you're still available.
Yep.
Okay. Right then. In the meantime, Richard Little, good evening. I'd just like to introduce Richard. He's from Your Land Partner. After you, sir.
Hello, can you hear me, Rob? Yeah.
I can hear you fine. I'm just going to mute myself.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen then. So bear with me, everybody. I'm not quite so au fait as Richie is with all this sort of stuff. If I can find where it is I'm looking for. Blimey, there's a load of stuff on there, isn't there? Somewhere there's, there it goes. There we go. Play from the start. Now, hopefully somebody will tell me they can see that. I can see it, which is good. Right. Can you see that, Rob? Oh, Ivana. Yeah. Good. Perfect. Right. Good evening, everybody. Right, I've got a tough job following Richie, and whilst Richie and I agree on many things, there's one or two things we don't agree on, but you might spot them as we go through. But anything for a healthy debate. But one of the things that I sort of get from Richie is I've listened to his presentation before, slightly different this time. I did miss a little bit of it, I have to say, but he really enjoy what you're doing, and that's fantastic, because what I'm going to do tonight is I'm not going to try and talk you into development. If anything, I'm going to try and talk you out of it. Find some reasons you shouldn't be doing it and explore them before you do it. So, and as Richie said, it's not easy, guys, and it really isn't. And those of you that are already doing it, whether it's just starting out or whether it's flips or, conversions or whatever it might be, it's hard work, you know, and so, you know, don't make any, you know, don't, for anybody that's I like what Richie said, if you don't want hard work, don't talk to me, something like that, which is great. So anyway, so what I want to do is I want to talk to you tonight really about, you know, the current and the future development opportunities. I'm not going to sort of talk about me too much, because anybody that knows me knows that I can talk for about 3 years on anything, and it gets a bit boring. So we'll get through to some decent content hopefully soon and as with Richie, I think we've probably got 10 minutes or so to answer some questions at the end. So what I want to say is that, you know, wherever you are at the moment, in terms of whether you've been doing some firefighting in your business, whether you're really struggling, we've had some firefighting to do. There's still a lot more to do because we don't know the depth of some of the problems at the moment, but the sunshine is coming, because, you know, just like after the sunshine, the rain will come. It happens. Good times happen, bad times happen. This one is potentially taking us by surprise. It has and it hasn't, because most of us were waiting for a correction. We're all gearing up for a correction anyway. And this, you know, as you'll see as I go through here, is without question, I see it as the biggest opportunities in my lifetime. And it's a great time to be starting. And I'll go through some of the things that I think you need to consider as if, you know, if you're getting into the business. So whilst we do a lot of, perhaps for some people, bigger developments, what I say is relevant pretty much for anything. If you're doing any building work and you're doing any property investment, you know, then much of what I say should be relevant to you in some form or other. But I'm going to leave it to you to pick out the bits, you know, the 1 or 2 nuggets that hopefully will give you over the next 35, 40 minutes. So just very, very briefly, whiz this through. Anybody can see me on video. Don't look like that. That apparently is 3 years ago. Next to me is my son, Bryn. So yeah, 3 generations, land, planning, construction. But you can pretty much read that, can't you? You don't really need me to read it out. So basically, we've been doing it a long time. I'm the 2nd generation. I started in 1976. Father started the business, various businesses in different names, different brands, as you call it now, over the years. Didn't do so much in branding in them days. He started it in the 50s. So we've been doing it a long time, and we've made a lot of mistakes. And that's where we've got our valuable experience from. So yeah, we've built over 3,000 homes, mostly, well, not mostly, but some for ourselves, some in partnerships, what people would now call joint ventures, partnerships, collaborations, etc. With landowners and other developers, etc. But it's a lot of units, and a lot of them, as per the background picture, are pretty much boxes. They're the bread and butter of the development business. Everybody likes to, you know, everybody likes to get involved in projects that are fantastic and prestigious and all that sort of stuff. Other than in a rising market, they rarely make any money, guys. So that's one tip: stay away from the fancy stuff. Yeah, just said about that. Yeah, we've traded through effectively 7 boom bust economic cycles, depending whether you believe it's a 9-year, a 14-year, an 18-year, or whatever. And we could debate that all night, and we'll all be wrong, and we'll all be right, because there is no actual. There's only been really 3 complete cycles since the Second World War. But anybody who wants to have a debate on that someday, I'm up for that. Yeah, so we've worked with a lot of new and scaling businesses. Those of you that don't know, Bryn founded it really, but he and I sort of worked together on Property Developers Academy. So we've been in the training business, and very interesting for me, again, something else that Richie says is he doesn't really now enjoy a lot of the development because he's done a lot of that stuff and all that. But actually, I didn't really enjoy the education. Although the education bit was all right and the interaction with people was great, what I didn't like is everything you need to do to get people in the room, the sales and the marketing and all that sort of stuff. And that's not what we're about. And so we pretty much, you know, we folded that because we realized to make any real money at education, you've got to do it at scale. And we weren't prepared to sell out, I guess, is what I would say on that one. So yeah, we've got that little book there, House Building Handbook. It is a very small book. It's about 90 odd pages. We've given out, I think we've given out and sold about almost 300 copies in since lockdown has begun. And I'll just very, very briefly say about, I don't know if anybody on here has written a book, and fair play to you if you have, because it's flipping, whether the book's any good or not, in all honesty, the actual focus that you need and the hard work and the dedication to actually get that book out the other end is amazing. Now, Bryn pretty much wrote this book. Some of them are my words, some of them are his, but he pretty much wrote it, and it's a pretty small book. But we launched it, as most people do, and become #1 Amazon bestsellers, because it's pretty easy to do, as most of you know. Somebody managed to do it with a book with empty pages in it. But what we're really, really pleased of, in fact, probably yesterday or today, the 2nd or 3rd of June, is a year ago since we launched it. And actually we hit, I think, #2 on Monday. And I don't think you have to sell an amazing amount of copies to go up and down these flipping categories, because there are a lot of them. But we were quite pleased, because you don't make any money out of it, you know, unless you're a bestseller. You don't make money out of books. But for us, it's important, the message that we're trying to get through. Everything you need to know about house building is in that book. But obviously, that's the fundamentals, that's the foundation. You need to build on that. So if you haven't got a copy, we haven't got any copies in the minute to give away, but probably we will have in the next few weeks or so. Or if you want to buy one, it's £6.99, of which we get about 30p, I think. But anyway, let's crack on. Couple of more little bits about him. Now, I used to live there. 26 room, sort of a mansion, if you like, and I'm talking about that because not really for showing off, because I used to live there. I don't live there anymore. This is a victim of development not going too well. You know, we sold out this was back in the late 80s, 90s, early 90s. We'd sold out in what was, you know, just before a recession in the late 80s, and managed to sort of get away from it all, like people are looking to do at the moment, change your lifestyle. So we moved across the country from Cambridgeshire across to Shropshire, brought this and lived like the lord and lady of the manor for a bit. We had the whole sort of, you know, the horses and on the ponies and all that stuff for the kids, and, you know, all that sort of, you know, all that stuff, which is what it is, and proceeded to sort of effectively lose it all, and ended up with a High Court judgment against my name. I don't do things by half. I don't go for those county court judgments. I've not had one of those, but High Court judgments are different class. Now, but the key here is that if you don't know what you're doing, then, you know, you can have a lot, but you can lose it very, very quickly. And the point really about this is we didn't really know what we were doing. We knew what we were doing when we sold up, because, you know, we sold up, and that was really dead clever. And I could tell you, oh, weren't we smart because we sold up just at the right time? You know, but that was pure luck. So the point about this is the market. You do not control the market. Doesn't matter how positive you are, whatever statements that you want to make and what you want to believe, you do not control the market. So again, I'm going to come back to something that Richie said. If you didn't catch it all, it's about doing need projects. Back to the boxes. Do what is in need. Yeah. And any point of any cycle, whether we're in a recession or not, there is always a need. You just need to find what that need is and get filling that need. And as I say, even in the top market, steer away from the fancy stuff. Right. So rather than go too much about what else we're doing, we're going to come back to that a little bit later. But I thought I'd just share a few things that were probably going to be more valuable. Is what we're looking for at the moment is opportunity. Now, there is a massive amount of motivation out there, but some of it hasn't yet crystallized. So some of it's in its infancy. So I'm talking about people, landowners, site owners. So when I refer to landowners, that includes building owners. So to me, every real estate asset is land, because it is. That's what's called land registry and not house registry and building registry. Yeah. So what we are looking for, and I guess most people that are with us tonight are looking for some sort of motivation from that potential motivated seller. I think the term is often used. Well, we have got coming up, and it's already on our desk, is a whole new lot of motivation, or a new generation of motivated sellers. And I just briefly want to touch on those. And I know Richie mentioned a couple of the bits. Now, some of the motivation is coming from financial. Now, so some of that is financial pressure in terms of businesses or projects that are what we call on the edge. They're in trouble, or they look like they're in trouble. So at the moment, if you're unfortunate enough to be marketing stuff right now, and over the next quarter or 2 quarters, certainly for the rest of this year, then you're probably not going to get the values that maybe the project deserves, but the market is going to dictate that you're not going to get those values. So those businesses and projects are what we call on the edge. They're teetering on the brink. If things don't quite go, so if the market, one of the questions was about how they saw the market going. If the market doesn't quite go how you want it to, perhaps there is a bit more of a drop off and it takes a little bit longer to pick that back up again, then you could be, your project could easily just disappear. So 10% off the end values, and with a lot of overspend and over costs and stuff like that, all of a sudden the project's not even viable anymore, but you're committed, and you're committed with your investors, and you're committed with your funders. Now, we get this stuff even in the good times. We've had this sort of stuff on our desk since we've been involved in networking type situations like this for what is, I think now, 7 years. I've been saying 6, but apparently it's 7 years now. And that's even in the good times. People overpay for stuff. They overestimate end values, the GDV. They underestimate the costs. And I know, Rich is big on all that sort of stuff because it's so easy to do. If any of you out there are a fan of spreadsheets, I love myself a good spreadsheet, but I can make that spreadsheet do whatever I want it to. But delivering it to that is another matter. So we're going to get a lot of motivation for people that are perhaps either not in trouble yet, but are likely to be in trouble, unfortunately. And that's all the way through from people that are, landlords with single lets, or through all the different sort of, strategies, as people call them, that people follow, all the way through to bigger developments. Now, so there's a massive opportunity coming there. But sometimes you have to let the projects and the businesses go over the edge. Now, this is when the assets become available either through fixed charge receivers. So those funders and those investors might be calling the asset in because they're concerned, for whatever reason, and they're trying to protect their money. So anybody with a first charge, which is generally the senior lender, they're often the first ones to call the stuff in. They then normally go through a fixed charge receiver that takes the asset back. Sometimes it ends up in the hands of insolvency practitioners, so IPs. So if you know any of these sort of people, that they could be your best friends over the next, my estimation is over the next couple of years or so, because what happens in our industry is that even if a recession, the recession, there's no question we're having a recession, even if the recession is, relatively shallow and relatively short, the pickup from that, and businesses that have gone out of businesses that have gone under, will take years to actually reach the market sometimes and get resolved. There are still stuff from the last recession that hasn't yet been solved. So some people might be surprised at that. There's all sorts of reasons. And that's another whole hour-long conversation in its own right. So you'd be looking for those sort of opportunities that are over the edge. And some of them are on the edge. So locally, if there's a project that's perhaps stopped, now things should be moving again. If they're not started up, find out who owns the asset, see if you can reach out to them. But one of the big things is, which we'll come on to on the next slide, is the cash. But there may well be sound businesses that are motivated to sell because maybe some of the commercial, some of the businesses in terms of your retail, your leisure, your hospitality, and all the way through there, this might just be what we would call the straw that breaks the camel's back. They've had enough because they've struggled, they've built a business, and so some of those sound businesses, but they might be wanting to move their assets on. And again, this is going to be smaller opportunities and bigger ones. I know Richie talked about sort of, some of the not small opportunities, but smaller opportunities. So there will be plenty of people out there that are motivated. So you've got to reach out and find them and talk to them. Everything we do is nearly everything we do is direct to vendor. But there's other motivation now, which is somewhat different in the volume that we think we're going to get it, which is more lifestyle motivated. So, and some of you may be doing the same thing. We are entering, for many of us, a new world. It's a new world for me, and I've been on this one for 60 some odd years. And it is a new world. It's this opportunity, this 20, the sort of say 20 months. It's not been that long. It seems like that long. These few months, 20 weeks or whatever. No, it's not even that long, is it? It's given us a chance to step back, reflect, and what's important moving forward, and it's reviewing everything. And I think something that Rob pointed out at the beginning was about reviewing your core team, etc. So it's been a good chance to look back and sort of say, am I working with the right people? What should I be doing? I think reviewing the strategy and things like that. We're saying that's all valuable. That's what we should be doing with this time. Some of us have got spare time. Some of us are busier than ever before. So there's going to be people that are making lifestyle decisions. So they will become motivated to perhaps realize some assets, some cash, some assets to let them move on. They become opportunities. Space, people, looking for more space. So if you are looking at, providing homes, are people wanting more inside space? Well, space comes at a cost. Generally, I know we talk about, lots of homes are too small and all that sort of stuff. But if they were bigger, they'd be more expensive. So you have to get that balance between space and cost, effectively the value. But people will probably be looking for more space. That could very well be more people moving out of the cities and out of the big towns, maybe into the edge of the towns, edge of the cities, or even into the countryside. So some of those people that have got assets, may want to move on. And obviously the big thing, and we've heard this before quite a few times, or I have, in the 70s and the 80s particularly, it was going to be the thing, and everybody was going to work from home. But what they didn't realise at the time that, even now, most people aren't able to work from home, and sometimes you hear people talking about it as though everybody can work from home. Well, very few people, not everybody can, but when they can, what are they going to be wanting? At the minute, people are, perching on the edge of a bed or a dining room table with a laptop on their knees or something or other because they don't have the space. Some of us are very, very fortunate. We're very fortunate. We live in a relatively big house, got loads of rooms. It's not a problem. But not everybody's. That doesn't work like that for everybody. So, again, looking at your product, whatever it is you are going to develop and sell or rent out, is this could become quite a big selling point. So making sure that we've got some space somewhere that is dedicated for home working. But what do you need moving forward for those of you that are getting into it, those of you who are more experienced? But what do you need right now? Well, you need deals. This is all not rocket science, guys. You need experience. You need cash, uppercase letters of cash, because cash is king, and that's sort of it is. So a lot of the opportunities that we were talking about before, or suggesting about before, with the IPs, the insolvency practitioners, and fixed charge receivers, and the funders that are selling. We're already talking direct with funders on what we used to call Project Rescue, but now it's Project Gone, and what sort of negotiation, what can we do with them, because some of them, many of the funders are going to take a haircut. They're going to lose money. And they know that. It's just a case of how much and how can they get out of it. So cash isn't it? If you can bring cash to the table, you should always be. If it's only skin in the game, again referred to earlier, you know, you need some skin in the game. You need some running around money. And regardless of how you get your funds, funders won't fund everything. They won't fund what we call soft costs. They won't fund your petrol money, your bills, etc. So cash is absolutely key. And the other thing that you should never underestimate is connections. Now, there will be people that listen to this that don't have any deals, don't have a lot of experience, for instance, and don't have any cash. But if you have got connections, you will be able to trade yourself and get yourself around a table with the people that have got the other stuff because of the connections. So never undervalue your connections. And also some people don't even realize what connections they've got, who they know that has cash, who they know that is in the business, whether it's as a professional, you know, an architect, a QS, a project manager, you know, and trades, loads of trades. A lot of trades underestimate who they know as well. And I think one of the questions was from a contractor. You know, a lot of contractors that we've worked with in the past, and we've got one of our partners at the moment is a contractor, is that they probably know 90-95% of what they need to know from certain part of development. It's just the other little bits that they lack. But what does this mean? How do we sort of work through this? So we've got a sort of a pretty an easy way of looking at this. And if you've got one of that four, if you put your head down, you'll make some money. So if you've got the connections, for instance, you can make some money, but you've got to get your head down and work it and work those connections and get yourself in the right place. As somebody that might have a site, or they've got a piece of land or whatever. Well, okay, who do you know that it might be who might be taking it on, and make sure that you get rewarded. If you've got two of those, you can make some pretty serious money over the next, well, I'm going to say over the next, 2 to 5 years, probably. The stuff that you secure, the projects that you secure during the next 12, 18 months will be your projects that you might bring home over the next 5 years, depending on what they are and how big they are. If you're fortunate enough to have 3 of those, and some of us, have been around a lot longer, very, very fortunate that we might have 3 of those. Really, that's a case of, okay, we can just make money. How much can we cope with? If you're really fortunate and got all of it, that's going to be about how much you want to make, because you can again, using a term that Richie used, leverage. I'll do a whole thing on leverage, good and bad. Most leverage I see is bad, but if it's good leverage, it's fantastic. So if you've got 4 of those, you can leverage it. You could make as much money as you want to make. But very few people are fortunate enough to have all 4, and most people have 1 or 2 at best. So what do you do? This is about collaboration. This is about partnering with people, and working through wherever you are. The contractors that have got the delivery skills, but maybe not directly in new build. Well, okay, that's you can work around that. It's actually making sure that we get the experience, some of the lacking experience somewhere else. Right, I'm conscious of the time, so I want to give you as much content as we can in the last sort of 10, 15 minutes or so. So if I don't get to the end of the slides, don't worry. That's why I put most of the content at the front and all the drivel at the back, really. Because you don't really want to know about me, because it's not that important. So these are the key areas of development. Everybody sort of does things. I think Richie's got 8 pillars. We got 7. We used to have, I think we used to have 9. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. All the fundamentals are there. So if you are looking for an opportunity, obviously you're sourcing it. Now, this is where we would say that people fall down, because they look for it to come to them. They look for other sources to bring stuff to them, and maybe that works for some, and maybe that maybe it doesn't. Well, I'll say it suggests that it rarely will. So you've got this is where we invest a lot of money, and I mean a lot of money. We might do a lot of projects, and some of them are quite big. We've got around about between us and our partners, we've got around about 1,000 units in our deliverable pipeline at the moment. But whether they all get delivered will depend very much on post-COVID values and how long that dip lasts. That I suggest is most of us now agree there is going to be a dip at last. So we invest a lot of money in the sourcing. Appraising is where everything's at. This is about making sure that you are going to get that 20% GDV or whatever it is that you're looking for. But it's also where people get it wrong because they make the spreadsheet tell them what they want it to tell them. And you know, the stuff that we get across our desk is just, you know, nonsensical in many cases, just doesn't work. But people often invest some time and some money into having drawings done and things like that. You know, no, you don't need to do any of that, guys. You just don't. You do that at the right point. So what we're looking at is we're sourcing it, we're appraising it, and then we secure it. Yeah. We do not secure it, then appraise it. And we can't prove this probably. If we were in the room, we'd ask people to put their hand up, you know, all that sort of stuff. And most people wouldn't, but I would look people in the eye from the front of the room, and I would normally suggest that at least half of any room secures before they appraise, nearly every time. And they justify then the appraisal afterwards. But anyway, that's not one to go into too much. So then once we go through the process of development, planning, you know, again, if we've done the right sort of deal, the planning is where we're going to probably get, you know, the first chance of an uplift. And people then, you know, some people then look to move that on at that point. You don't want to hear my rant about that. Very rarely is that successful either, but it's another story for another day. Money is dead important. Funding, you know, got to look at the funding. You've got to have, again, what Richie's saying, you've got to have some cash, guys. You need cash. The people that lend the money, whether it's your investors or the development funders or whatever, they ain't stupid. Some of them are a bit naive, fair enough, but, you know, they're going to be looking for something, you know, so, you know, they're not going to provide you with every penny unless you're really experienced. To be fair, we can do stuff without any money, any of our own money. But that's sort of not how we like to do it. We like to have our own skin in the game because I feel better anyway. The build, which is the most exciting part of the project for me, not so Richie, but certainly for me, you know, yeah, I don't think you could call yourself a developer, if I'm honest, if you don't do the build. You know, you don't have to get out there and do it all yourself. But it's, you know, most people that we've collaborated with and some of the people we've trained in the past, you know, it's the most exciting bit. But of course, sometimes it's the one where you lose a lot of money. And finally, obviously, with any project, it's the exit. So, and this is, again, going to come back. I'm going to quote Richie all night because he makes my life easier. Really, it's the need projects. So you start with the end in mind, a common phrase that you're all familiar with probably. Let's look at the exit. Are we going to sell? If we're going to sell, what are we selling? Who are we selling it to? Are we going to keep it? Which in times of uncertainty is, you know, the safest route to go. But so let's look at what people need. So start with that end in mind. So before you start sourcing, or once you get the sourcing and the appraising bit, let's appraise projects and go for planning on projects that are deliverable firstly, but they are going to have a reasonably safe exit. So affordable housing is pretty much always, there's always a need for that. And you know, that's a pretty safe sort of path to be following at the moment. But before we get off this slide, I just want to sort of point out that that's where you make the deal. You don't make the deal beyond that line. Nothing you do beyond that line will make the deal. What it will do, it may improve it, but it will not make it. So the sourcing, obviously, the appraising and the securing, and how you structure it without complicated joint ventures and loads of partners. Don't go in for all of that sort of stuff. You can joint venture, you can partner without making it complicated. And the risk of being slightly controversial, don't even bother trying to joint venture with a landowner. That's not the way to do it. It is so complicated you wouldn't believe, but we will joint venture with a landowner in a different way. So we will structure it in a way so that there is little risk for them. and they don't have to put PGs, which effectively, if anybody that's part of the joint venture, the official joint venture, or shareholders, even down to 15% of the shares now in SPVs, you're likely to have to give personal guarantees and stuff. So that's where you make the deal. You manage it from that point onwards, which I know those of you who've got any experience of planning will sort of say, oh, maybe that isn't working. We manage our planning all the way through. Do we always get it right? No, we don't. But every part of that is manageable. Yeah. So you make the deal at the first bit. For those of you that get into the second 4 pillars, if you like, the second, the last 4 pillars, is, if you haven't got the first bit right, you're going to be firefighting all the way through. What's the point? Yeah. Again, bit what Richie said. I should have a Richie tin here. Every time I put it up, I put a pound in or something or other. So I think I'll be broke by now. Right. So just sort of in the last few minutes, just really want to sort of just show you what's going on at the moment. So this is the project we've got on. This is a conversion project. Most of our stuff this is on site, or it was on site and then it stopped and it started and then it stopped. And I think they're back on seriously next week. All the demolition's done. Most of our stuff is new build. Why I'm mentioning this and the next project, because they're the 2 projects we've got on site at the moment. These projects, this one and the next one, I'll go straight on to the next one. That's a new build. That's just 10 units. So 19 on the first one and 10 on this one. They're most at risk where we are, because we are committed on these. And the second one, the new build, we're more committed than the first one. The first one still may be, if over the next couple of months we start seeing stats from the transactions in terms of the valuations are going down, then we might mothball that. We might just sort of sit on it, rather sit on it with $1.5 million of the debt than we will on the once we sort of built it out for 4.5, something like that. We don't really want to be sitting on it then. We don't want to sit on it at all. But if the market dictates, then that's what we would do. This one we're a little bit more committed, but we're fairly confident about this one, even with a bit of slippage on the prices. We not going to lose any money on it, So this is we are working with the landowner on that. But so the challenge is, we got the challenges like everybody else, all the social distancing and working and all that sort of stuff, and the materials and the supply chain. It's challenging. Prices might go up. At the minute, we're seeing probably material prices pushing up a little bit. But if you are so minded, you can pick up cheaper labour now. We've had guys knocking on the door on the site out here and sort of saying, look, we'll work for X, which is considerably less than the guys we've already got there. But we've got an agreement with the other guys. That's not the way we work, but it will on some sites. It will be. So labour much more plentiful over the next, I don't know how long, but I suspect all of this year and probably most of next year. Let's just sum it out. So this is a typical scheme we've got. This is sort of in midst of planning this one. So we've had some issues with some of the site surveys haven't been able to be done because we've got a transport highways survey being done, but they can't do them at the moment. Haven't been able to do them because the traffic on the roads isn't sufficient to get sound data. So so we're having to work around that, but that's just well, it's actually there's a scheme that's been changed from that this week. So that's just 40 units, which is sort of where we like to sit. And there's affordables on there, so we're already in negotiations with a potential exit on that. And for the first time, not for the first time we've looked, but for the first time we're seriously looking at modular. Again, anybody that knows me, I'm one of the most cynical people about modular because they're still a long way, but now we've got a real good chance of getting some costs down and perhaps delivering some of this stuff, which will be quite exciting. And the council are quite keen on it as well. And this is another bit that's so this is I don't know, I can't remember, it's 8, 9 or 10 acres, but I think there's 80 units going on that one, or will do when we come out at the other end of planning. Now, all of our stuff isn't this size. We've got one that we've got an option on, and we don't do many options, but we've got we're looking at them a little bit more closely now because of the market. We've got one for 4 units down in Kent somewhere down that way, again with a local partner. So not all of our stuff is bigger. For us, we quite like to mix it up a little bit. Some sort of smaller stuff. We don't normally do much less than 10, to be fair, but the values down there are pretty good. So it's, you know, again, we always look to make sure we're not going to lose any money. So very, very quickly go through what you need to make this work is focus and clarity here. This is what we're looking at. So, you know, set your mind to what it is you're going to do. And I like what Rob said about, you know, small group masterminds with your peers. Fantastic. You don't have to pay for all this sort of stuff. You know, yeah, sometimes the paid stuff may be more valuable. Sometimes it isn't. But, you know, invaluable, kicking ideas around with you know, with some of your peers. Really good. But focus on what you're looking for, and whatever task you're doing at any one moment, focus on it. Don't spread yourself, you know, shiny pennies. Yeah, we all like a good shiny penny, I suppose, but now's not the time. You know, now decide what 2 or 3 things you might be looking at and get stuck into them. Communication's always key. So whether you've got a project that's, you know, perhaps underperforming or it's a bit of a problem, you know, don't lose touch with your investors, don't lose touch with your funders, you know, because it's absolutely key. You will improve your credibility with those people, even if the project doesn't perform as well as, you know, everybody would like it to, and even if it loses money. Yeah, if you keep that communication up, and I know communication is not easy for some, and it's much easier to put their heads in the sand. And unfortunately, I refer back to those businesses that are on the edge. We know a number of businesses and projects on the edge that are be over the edge, but the people running them won't reach out. So there's nothing you can do. And it's all about timing, you know, so when is the right time? You know, we're all got used to a little bit about, you know, COVID-19 and whatever your opinions and your views are, doesn't really matter. We are coming out to a different place, and it may take a long time before anything's back to perhaps what you might consider normal, may well be a new normal. So when's the right time to reach out to people that perhaps have the opportunities, whether they're in trouble or it's stuff that you've identified on the planning portal, wherever it might be? Well, we're just going out now back to landowners that we've been in contact with over the last couple of years, just to see if their circumstances are changing. We'll try and do it in an insensitive way. We'll probably upset 1 or 2, but you've got to put yourself out there. You know, so I'd suggest now you need to start thinking about reaching out for those opportunities. But what I wouldn't do is secure any of them, you know, not unless those terms are on a lower baseline. So, you know, the unknown in terms of end values, which a couple of the questions were about earlier, you please don't, you know, don't sign a deal now. I know there's a few people out there doing stuff. In fact, we've made some offers and we've agreed some stuff, but on much lower baseline. The last 2 weeks is the busiest 2 weeks I can remember in terms of deal flow. So very quickly, I'm sure we're about there, is right. So yeah, what you do need, and this is really important, is this: new money, new mindset, new results is one of my son's slides, but effectively this is about a risk money mindset. So, you know, if you look at the risk on the vertical and the investment on the horizontal, if you invest the money wisely, the more you invest, the lower the risk will be. Now, you could talk about that from education. You could talk about it from mentoring. You could talk about it from consultancy. We would talk about it from the point of view of spending money on appraising deals, yeah, and don't be afraid to say they're no good. So, you know, the question you should always ask yourself, or you should all ask yourself, sorry, is whatever strategy that you are following, then how much will you prepared to walk away from? You know, so if you don't want to spend £500 before you know whether something's a deal or not, my feeling is that you're either going to miss some that could be deals, or you're going to be, you know, perhaps signing up to the wrong things. We will invest as much money as we need to. We're looking for the no. We'll invest as much money as we need to get to a no. We don't want the no, but that's what we're looking for. We will walk away. We've walked away in the last 2 years. We've walked away from one which is over 100 grand. Now, we're really fortunate enough we could do that. But what I'm saying to you is you need to make your minds up. A, you've got to have some cash to put into it in the first place. But B, Are you prepared to invest that? And if you like it, you're not going to get any return on it. I would suggest that in order to create deal flow or a pipeline or whatever, if you can't do that, please be mindful of what you are doing, because you know where are your deals going to come from, and how good are they going to be if you're not investing. So that's pretty much a whistle-stop tour of the presentation. So I'm going to leave you with that. Now, we're certainly in challenging times, and if you are well informed, well positioned and well supported, whatever it is you need to move forward, now is a good time to be sorting that out and saying, okay, can I work with people, or can I work on my own? Can I leverage my time, or whatever it might be? But these are some of the most challenging times in many ways, and as a general times anyway, not personal times, that all of us have probably experienced. And that is why, in many ways, we feel, not just me, but lots of people that have been around, a lot of our boring old so-and-sos like me, have been around a long time. Well, this is, amongst all the tragedy in lost lives and lost businesses and all that sort of thing, this is probably one of the most exciting times. I expect it to be the most exciting time I've lived through in terms of opportunity and turning that into projects. And that doesn't matter whether they're small projects for people that are just starting out, in terms of, you know, even a buy to let or something or other. Just hang on to your money. Just don't jump. Prices in most areas will be coming down, but if you want to be bullish and go out there and do it, and if you're going to keep it for 20 years, it probably won't make much difference. But if you're not, then just wait, just be patient. Yeah, just start having those conversations with your peers, with agents, you know, with you know, put some direct to vendor letters out there, you know, start having those conversations, you know, investors or stuff like that, because, you know, now's the time to do that. Reach out. Don't wait until you found a project and then try and reach out and get the money, because there is a lot of money out there, but you know, you don't want to lose out. So hopefully it's not gone too far over, Rob. So I'm going to hand it back to you and see if there is any. I'll stop sharing. There we go. All back.
Hello, am I back? Am I back? Yes, I think I am. Thank you very much, Richard. Brilliant. Very interesting. What I would like to say is we've still got 10 minutes or so. Questions. There are a couple of questions I think that didn't get answered. So if anybody would like to, assuming you've both got time to answer them, if anybody would like to ask some questions, there's 2 on there at the moment. If you'd like to just put your hands up and type out your questions, or you can come on camera if you want. But in the meantime, while that's all getting sorted out, COVID-19, I mean, we're full of it at the moment. I like your Property Network. It's a great magazine. I've got this, my new one. I haven't even opened it yet, but it's still full of COVID-19 information. And the other thing is, for the meet, I started up a WhatsApp group last time, and on the WhatsApp group, I've put 1 to 20 property tips for beginners. So I'm going to put more up, but if anybody wants to get a copy of it, by all means, just join the WhatsApp group, and you can have them. What else was there? Yeah, that was about it. Networking. I think I'm going to find networking. The good thing about going to these meets is you talk to people, and you can actually physically go and have a drink with them, or sit and have a cup of coffee, or just sit next to them and chat, which you don't get on here. What we do have is we've got this WhatsApp group, and I'm going to work on the networking. I'm going to try and find a way around it. Not sure how it is yet, but there we go. I will be working on it. So in the meantime, if there's any questions, please, I'll hand you over to Ivona, and off you go.
Thank you, Rob. There's a couple of questions for Richard. A question from Louise. Richard, what are the average per unit build costs for your boxes you work to? And how much more would, for example, a listed or more complicated building be per unit?
Okay. I won't completely avoid the question because it's one of the common questions that we get asked. But before I do answer the question, it's just what Rob was saying about the networking. Within Zoom, you can get networking rooms. You can break out rooms and things. I don't know how to do it, but I've been on them, so that might be something to follow. Okay. So we had a conversation. With our partners yesterday. So we've got we can build for less than £1,000 a metre, less than £100 a foot. Now that doesn't mean to say that's always going to include the roads and stuff like that, but that's only at volume. Yeah. So I see lots of people putting out what you can build for, and then, oh, you can't build for that. So there are people, the volume builders will still be building at probably around about £900 a metre. Yeah. And because they can, and whether you like the product or whether you don't, that it actually for £900 is pretty good value. Of course, you're not paying £900, are you? But so normally what we'd say, this is about economy of scale, project type, your own experience, who you're choosing to do the work and that for you. So we would be building at that sort of level. We would be the main contractor. So going against where Richie comes from is the margins in being the main contractor. It's a lot more work, absolutely, but that's where the margin is. And when the margins are tight, that's where you pick them up from. But yeah, so typically we would normally say, the industry would normally say that to go to a main contractor, they are likely to be 20% dearer than your base cost would be. But of course, within that 20% margin, you are going to accrue some costs. So normally the difference in margin will normally be 8, 10, 12%, something like that. So that's sort of not answered the question yet. I'm going to. So I would say that if you were building 4 new houses, for instance, and if it was a row of 4 terraced houses, and it wasn't complicated, wasn't on a slope or in a mining area or something like that, you should be producing those with a main contractor at about £1,300, £1,400 a metre all in. But if you're doing it yourself, then you're going to be saving a couple £100 a metre off of that. But equally, if you're building something in the middle of London or many busy parts, it's going to cost you more, and it can be significantly more. But what I always say to people, which we were talking about yesterday, is if you can't build for £1,200 a metre, then in most areas of the country, many areas of the country, nobody would ever build because there would be no land value. Conversions, and we don't do a lot of conversions, and I showed you one tonight. We don't do a lot of conversions, but conversions, they could be from £300 a metre to any amount you like. But normally, when it needs a decent amount of work, we would say that they're on par with new build prices, dependent on ground conditions and all that sort of stuff. But it is a how long's a piece of string type thing. If it's listed and stuff like that, and a couple on here that know me know that my sort of I don't know what you'd say. I don't do listed anymore, and I still admire people that do. But if you're going to do a listed and you're going to hold it, then I see something in it. But if you're going to do a listed and hope to make money out of it, good luck with that. I know very few people that actually make money out of listed buildings and selling them unless the market is exceptionally kind to them. So how much do you add on a contingency? Again, I think it was mentioned earlier about contingency of 10%. We use contingencies of 5% in the industry where we are. 3% is the norm, but we go in 5%. Most funders like to see the 5% on new build, but for something like a listed, if it's complicated, I'll be putting 50% in and probably more. But I am, I'm not the right person to advise on that, other than the fact that you've got to love them, and they have to be. It's more of a relationship thing than it is about making money. So hopefully that's sort of answered it, as best I can anyway.
Thank you, Richard. A question from Will. What is your best ever deal? What is your best ever deal, and where did you really make the money in the project?
Okay, so I'll do where we make the money. I'm going to make a statement, and it could be challenged, but we've discussed this quite a lot. we have only ever really made any decent money out of the market and the market rising. And that's nothing to do with us. We can sit there and say, oh yeah, but you know, if you weren't in it and all that sort of stuff, but you know, it's been the market. And equally, we could also say that when we've lost money, it's been because of the market, but we don't look at it like that. What we look upon is when we've made any amount of money, and we've made a lot of money, and we've lost a lot of money as well, and we're probably marginally ahead, or I guess we must be marginally ahead. You know, a bit of a roller coaster, but when we've made money, it's not about anything we did. That isn't, you know, you shouldn't believe it's because your product is superior and all that. It's because you produced a decent product and you sold well, that's fine, or you kept it, or whatever it might be. When you lose money, that's never anybody else's fault either. You know, so when you make money, it's everybody else. It's not you. And when you lose money, it's not anybody else. It is you. And it just makes you, it keeps you sane, because if you truly believe when you make money, you know, you can't do anything wrong. And this is where, while you don't see many developers successful over decades, we haven't been successful over decades. We're successful on the point we're still here, you know, but it's not a continual, you know, upward sort of progress. It doesn't work like that. And, you know, and so really, you know, it's about, you only make money in the good times out in the market. So, you know, best deal, in a way, weirdly, and I did this on a podcast, and it caught me off the thing, and I used this as the answer. The picture that I showed you earlier, the image earlier of the big fancy house that we lived in one time, was probably my favorite deal, because it went so spectacularly wrong. And so many things changed for me from that point forward, and I learned so much. I'm grateful for that. So in many ways, that's my favourite deal. Is it the one we made the most money about? No, of course it isn't, because we lost hundreds of thousands and well and more. You know, so you know, the best deal, yeah, I don't know. You know, the one that's made the most money. Yeah, we've got a number of projects that made an awful lot of money, but they weren't favourite deals. They just made money. And whilst we, you know, don't get me wrong, money is so important, and there's nothing wrong with being driven by money. I know some people say that's not. Money is in my values. It's one of my highest values, because if I don't value money, why would anybody, including myself, invest in me? And that's another story for another day. But you know, I think, you know, it's if I don't know. You know, people chase money because it's not money, because it does stuff for them. So, you know, we could earn £800,000 out of a deal, and yeah, it's great. But actually, the £800,000, we rarely see the money, because it just goes from one deal to another. You know, so you know, these days we can see what our bank balance is and everything. You know, by the second, can't we? We can have a live feed. You know, but actually years ago, which was better in my view, we you know, at one point we used to get a bank statement through the door once a month, and then we used to have to pay for once every 2 weeks, and then we pay for one once every week, because there were such volumes of money going through. But actually, in a way, it was better, you know, because we look back, and so you look on a bank statement and it said 1.8 million or something or other, you know, and at the end of it, it's minus 200,000, because that money's come in and it's gone straight back out again. You know, so, but these days we get this false idea of, oh, there's money in the bank, money in the bank, money in the bank. And then we almost forget that there's money going out sort of, you know, next month or whatever it might be. You know, so sorry, I'm waffling a little bit now, so I'll stop and see if you've got any more.
Yes, Richard, thank you. A question from Max. Do you ever use timber construction methods on your development projects? And if so, are they straightforward for end user purchasers to acquire mortgage finance on?
Yeah, so yeah, we did our first timber frame in the late 70s. We were one of the first in the southeast, effectively, well, north of London actually, to do some timber frame, and they were interesting if nothing else. And those houses still stand, because they're around the corner from one of my cousins, and there was a lot of them. But they were pretty shocking, if I'm honest. It was all new to everybody, and ever since then, we have wanted to do prefabricated rather than modular. Modular's, you know, depends what people define as modular, and certainly working with timber is thing. So at the minute, what we're looking at is panelized systems, and mostly in and around the timber, because, you know, to a degree it's proven. So the issue, as quite rightly sort of pointed out there, is that, you know, sometimes the funding, the end mortgages can be problematic. And please don't buy into this. No, just because, yeah, they're on the mortgage lenders and all that sort of stuff. Oh, you can get a mortgage. Well, yeah, you want to make sure that you actually can, and somebody already has, because whilst lenders might be prepared to lend on certain types of modern methods of construction, shall we say, it might come at a bit of an additional cost to your buyer, or if you're refinancing to hold it. So it is about proven methods, but it is changing, and I do hope that we will see not just the industry, but the funding side of the industry, if you like, embrace it a little bit more. But some of this stuff that they're putting out there, we've got one that's passive with a small p, that once we get 200 units in that area, we've got the funding for a factory to build it. Which is great, and we're quite liking that one, and it is largely timber based, and you know, all sustainable stuff and all that sort of thing, and you know, that's quite exciting. But just be mindful that whatever system you're looking at, if it's really new, stay away from it, to be honest. Pioneers rarely make a lot of money, you know. Even first adopters don't necessarily make a lot of money. Much better to be a second adopter and follow the trend, because, you know, once it becomes mainstream, hey, you know. But there are a lot of people that are keen on it, and I know people that sort of, yeah, we're only doing modular. You know, sorry guys, it doesn't make money enough yet. We've got a project, I might have shown it earlier, where we've got 14 or 16 of the units are for affordable, for a housing association, and they have a collaboration with a modular company. So they know they're costing more money, but they're prepared to pay for that, because they're doing a lot of what we call life cycle costing, because they're holding these for a long time. You know, so it makes sense for them. So we don't mind using the modular on that site, but we won't be able to do it for the rest of the units because it's too expensive. Even if it's 10%, where does that 10% come from? You know, it's either got to come from the land value, and the landowners aren't very keen on that, or it's got to come from your profits, and you know, we're not very keen on that. And actually, if it doesn't stack up financially, you haven't got that 20-ish% in GDV, most of the funders won't lend it anyway. So it almost makes it difficult. But relatively traditional timber frame, if you like, and some of the timber-based panelized systems, yeah, absolutely. And then actually, they're very, you know, they can be quite good value. We've had to price. We've got two projects. One's I can't remember, 16 or 18 new build, and the other one's 68, and that's just being priced for a metal structure, which we're looking at, because that is, cost wise, it's pretty good, but at the moment we're still unsure about the end funding. So, you know, we're not going to go into it if obviously it can't be refinanced or end mortgage.
Thank you, Richard. A question from Uwa. What has convinced you to start looking at modular for your schemes?
I think, to be honest, because I've always been interested in it, and I think it's the way forward, or it's been the way forward since the 70s when I got involved, you know, and it's never quite made it. And you know, I just want it to happen, because I think if it's looked at in the right way, it can lead to better quality homes, and that's what we should be building. But unfortunately, you know, as of yet, you know, as I say, it's the cost issues that are the biggest thing. But yeah, for us, you know, we've got an opportunity for investors to put money into something that they believe in. And if we can drive the price down, and the only way we can drive the price down of what we might produce in the factory is by volume. you know, because it's economy of scale, exactly what I was talking about before. So now is the time, and controlling ourselves is quite appealing. You know, one of the problems with the timber and other MMC products or systems is that they are relatively small. And it's very easy to get stuck in, you know, a supply chain problem, you know, and so, you know, and that's very risky. That's why some of the bigger developers are already opening or opened their own factories, you know, and because they want to control their own supply line. And so ultimately, as a developer, not a big developer, you know, 200 units a year is pretty much where we sit, you know. Then, you know, with our partners, that's probably bigger than that, but yeah, that's big enough for us to actually control our own supply line to a degree. And again, it's all about working on the margin, like becoming the main contractor, become your own supplier, and you know, whether it'll work out that as well as we like it to, don't know. But at the moment, we're just investing in it, and you know, we'll wait and see. If it doesn't work, you know, it'll be a shame, but hey, you know, we'll do our little bit anyway.
Okay, thank you, Richard. There is a question from Carl Davis. Richard, great talk. What's your thoughts on build to rent, and would you consider following this strategy given market conditions and trying to sell with the market falling?
Yeah, so now is exactly the build to rent time, whether you call it build to rent, whatever you want to call it, PRS on the bigger schemes and things. But yes, that's exactly what we're looking at now. And again, anybody that knows me, I'm not an investor. I don't understand the mindset of any of you investors out there, because trade it. I'm a trader. You know, pass it on, get your money, move on. I'm not an investor, although I probably invest, I suppose, but I'm not an experienced investor from that point of view. But now we've realized that we can de-risk many of our projects by taking that stance, and either you know, keeping them all or keeping some of them. You know, 68 units we were talking about earlier, you know, we're now looking at, you know, yeah, maybe keeping all of them potentially, because 68 units in the area it is probably a little bit, you know, and we don't know what the end values are, but we know what the end values will be on a 68 unit portfolio valued commercially on the rent roll. So, you know, and we won't be looking at those individual values. So we'll then know on that basis. So yeah, absolutely. You know, so anything that you are looking at right now, plan to keep it, even if you want to sell it, because your funders are going to want to know what your other exit is going to be, because there's only two exits. You keep them or you sell them. I know there's lots of different iterations of keeping them and selling them indeed. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, build to rent, you know, doing it in the right way. Not everybody's doing it in the right way, but yeah, doing it in the right way is good. Very good.
Thank you, Richard. From Property Angels, are you looking at pre-selling any schemes to HAs, guaranteed exit in this climate?
Yes, the 68 units was going to be a direct sale to a HA. Unfortunately, some of the HAs at the moment are in emergency budget measures, so they're not able to make decisions because their targets have been blown away for the year now, because they've ended one year, and now they've got the start of another year, most of them financial year. So we're still not, it's still not off the table, but at the moment we're looking at alternatives to that, because we've got you know, a number of projects that are suitable for purely for HAs or RPs, and you know, yeah, we in fact we've got a couple at the moment that we've gone back to on the basis of that they will be suitable for that. We just got to, if you get involved in that sort of stuff, you got to bide your time, because they're not the quickest, most of them, and they're enthusiastic sometimes, but not always follow through with what you want them to follow through when you want it done. So pre-selling, yeah, pre-selling, you know, effectively a letter of intent. You're not necessarily going to get a lot more than that. And you know, I will say something that is related to that. That we are fairly, should we say, we're nothing special, but we do get a little bit of information. There is going to be a lot more money kicking around the housing associations and other RPs supposedly, well, it will be channeled from central government post this COVID thing, or to try and help rebuild, because they know that if they put money into the housing market in the right way, most of it finds its way back into the economy. So it's a great way. So whether it's by grant or whether it's actually by just cheaper borrowing. I mean, we've got a deal on the table at the moment with a council where we are borrowing at 2.65% from them as a test, and if that works out, we're going to do some more stuff with them, and they're going to pass on what was 1% straight from the government, via them, because it's a good deal all round. So lots of opportunities, in my view, in and around councils, housing associations, other registered providers like councils and other charities, where there might be quite a lot of money. And that's not all big schemes, by the way. That could be small schemes. So again, looking at the exit, so yeah, good time to have conversations with them. But to be fair, they don't really know what they're doing yet. They're still sort of probably, still discussing the way forward. But, we're talking to 3 at the moment with specific schemes, and yeah, lots of great talking. But as I suggested before, it can take a while to actually get to legals. Often 6 months or so with a housing association, unless you dealt with them, a few times before.
Yes, I think you have answered most of the questions here. Let me see whether there is one more. I heard, this is from Property Angels again. I heard this from one of commercial tenants. Their intel was around mental health accommodation challenges, shortages post-COVID. Have you looked at this space?
Yes, we have. No surprise. I guess that's Karen. Yes, we have, and we're actually looking at something at the moment with a project, because we see, we do see a big opportunity. Again, comes back to what Richie said. Look for the need projects. What do we need? And we don't need massive projects all the time. They can be 2 units, 4 units. They can be, I don't know, super HMOs or whatever people want to call them, shared living and things like that, but actually who the end user group. So, particularly things, from the mental health side of things, in terms of some of the charities, then yeah, we see, many opportunities, and so we are specifically looking well at the moment.
Right, I think you have answered all of the questions that we have listed here. There was, I believe there was a couple of questions for Richie previously. Can we ask them now, Rob, or shall we leave them till later?
If Richie's got time to answer them.
Fine with me.
Yeah, so there is a question from Uwa here, Richie. How do you build your team when you are just starting out?
Okay, so in terms of building your team, if you remember the image I told you to take a picture of, where we talked about having a non-exec advisor at the top, and we talked about a project manager. If you know no one, that's your starting point. Start up there, get yourself your non-exec advisor alongside you. How do you do that is another story, but just assuming you've got that person in place, they have a huge amount of contacts, those people that they will potentially introduce you to, that they know are credible, good values, values that align, honest, trustworthy. That's really important that they can introduce you to. And then go and check them out. And normally, once you've got a project manager or a non-exec advisor in place, that will open the door to many others, and you'll start building your team in that way.
Okay, thank you, Richie. So there's a lot of thanks from everyone. Also, a comment from Diana. Thanks, Richard. I think this is with regard to the booklet you mentioned previously. I had received my copy this week and super useful. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. Yeah, just a lot of thanks, great content, very informative to both speakers. I don't believe we have any more questions, Rob.
Sorry, unmute myself. There we go.
Yeah, I don't believe we have any more questions. I believe we have
yeah, that's great. I think we can call it a day at that, can we? Thank you very much, Richie. Very interesting. great presentation. Richard, likewise, a great pleasure to see you. Ivona, thank you very much for your help.
My pleasure.
What have I got to say? There was something I had to say. We'd had a bit of problem with the WhatsApp group, but we're sorting it out. Don't worry. Just message me on that number that we asked you to, which was 07940 150 519. If you've got a problem, but we'll be putting it out for you to get hold of, and it should all be sorted out pretty soon. So, good night, everyone. Thank you very much once again, and we look forward to seeing you next time, which will be, just check I believe it's the 1st of July. Details to follow, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.